I mean, I was told by my film professor there are films and there are movies, and sometimes you've got to know what you're walking into.
Yeah. See, but I come from a time when movies were films.
2023 has come and gone, and with last year, we got a lot of great movies and TV shows that were very additive to this art form that we all know and love. I got a chance to watch about 30 movies from last year, and I thought now is a better time than ever to give away my top 10 movies from last year. I found this list pretty difficult to make because there was a lot of great movies, a lot of great directors and actors coming together to put together incredible pieces of work. Now, before I start diving into what I did see in 2023, there's a lot of good movies that I just didn't get a chance to go out and see. I mean, some of these are from December when I got a little busy, or I just couldn't even find a showtime for these films. Starting out with films I just didn't see this year, but definitely deserve some kind of shout out because I've heard great things about them. Poor Things from A24, also The Iron Claw. I heard Zac Efron goes crazy in that movie. Zone of Interest, American Fiction, Jeffrey Wright, one of my favorite actors just working today. I heard he did awesome in that film. Perfect Days, Anatomy of a Fall, two foreign films that I heard did incredible. Ferrari from Michael Mann I thought would be a little bit disappointing, but I've heard nothing but great things from that movie. Mission Impossible, I've never really dived into that IP. I've only seen Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Besides that, nothing whatsoever. In terms of animation movies, I didn't see Suzume or TMNT. I wish I did. I heard both of those were absolutely incredible. Can't find anywhere to watch them. And also Rye Lane is on Hulu right now. I heard it's a very underrated romance movie that came out this year. So those are all movies that I just didn't get a chance to see. I really want to see them, but as Oscar season comes up, a lot of these films are going to be getting more and more buzz, so I think I may just see them around that time when they're available to stream or rent somewhere. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into just the honorable picks for me. Some movies that just slightly missed the top 10 for me this year, but I still really enjoyed. So starting out with a movie that just missed my top 10 list, Barbie. It's at number 11 for me. I really enjoyed this whole experience of Barbenheimer. I saw Oppenheimer the night before this movie, and I got home at like midnight, woke up the next day, and saw Barbie in theaters. I love Greta Gerwig and what she's done. This feels like a movie that's just makes the most sense for her to do right now in her career. I'd definitely be lying, though, if I said that Barbie didn't disappoint me a little bit. I just knew what to expect from a movie like this, but it still just kind of didn't hit as hard for me as Little Women or Lady Bird did. I don't think it's terrible, though. I think it has a great message, good themes, good music, good costume design and set design. Margot Robbie killed it. Ryan Gosling was really good in Barbie as well, as to be expected. And right now, all over film Twitter, I'm seeing that Ryan Gosling may be nominated for an Oscar. I think that there's a solid chance that he wins an Oscar this year. I think that if Ryan Gosling gets nominated for an Oscar, that may be one of the greatest things to ever happen in mankind in general. I think that in terms of Best Actor, Cillian Murphy is probably going to win. I'd love to see Paul Giamatti get a nomination, but if Ryan Gosling sneaks in there, that will be just one of the greatest things to ever happen ever in history. I absolutely love Barbie. I gave it 4 out of 5. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth the time, but I think the experience of Barbenheimer kind of hyped it up more than it actually should have been. The next honorable pick for me is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, a movie that I didn't really know too much about going into 2023. It just had really solid word of mouth, a lot of people saying that it's criminally underrated, so I just got a chance to give it a watch, and it's really a movie that isn't doing too much. It has a lot of tropes that you've seen before in other teen movies, but it's just so brilliant in a way somehow. I really can't explain it. It stars Rachel McAdams, Benny Safdie, and it's adapted from a book from Judy Blume, an author who I definitely read a lot growing up. I'd call myself a Judy Blume enthusiast if I say so myself. This movie really captures everything that I just love about her books. Surprisingly, one of the best adapted screenplays of the year and potentially one of the best religious films ever made. It's really weird saying this about a movie intended for like 13-year-old girls, but I absolutely recommend giving this movie a watch. You won't be disappointed even in the slightest. I think Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is just a sleeper hit of the year. If I wanted to put it in my top 10, I really could, and I wouldn't be too mad at all. The next honorable pick goes to Asteroid City from Wes Anderson, a director who had a really good year. He had the 4 Netflix short films in addition to Asteroid City. This movie is really weird because I think it's really going to split a lot of audiences. It's either you absolutely love Asteroid City or you think it's terrible. I see a lot of people saying that it's Wes Anderson being the most Wes Anderson. That's absolutely true. It feels like he's almost making a movie reflecting on his place as an auteur in modern day film, as well as his relationship with his fan base. It's very complex in terms of the artists and the consumer, in addition to having just incredible set design and cinematography, framing, blocking that you expect from a Wes Anderson movie. I remember from 2023, there was a trend of just making everything look like it's from Wes Anderson, and they just kind of film everything symmetrically and add a vibrant color palette. That's just not at all what he is, and he shows that he's so much more than just his visual style. The narrative and the themes with this film are so complex you can analyze it for days, and it's one that's definitely just worth a shout out. The next honorable pick goes to Talk to Me from A24. It's my second favorite horror film of the entire year, and it's just really cool. I just love the directors, the Rocker brothers, kind of came out of nowhere and just delivered one of the scariest films of the entire year. In my last honorable mention, there's a lot of movies that just really grew on me and kind of just faded away as well. Creed 3 is definitely one of those movies. I think that there was a lot of buzz around it when it came out, then it kind of just got lost in all of the noise as the year went by, and a lot of people forgot about it. I love the just fight sequences and the directorial debut from Michael B. Jordan. His inspiration from anime TV shows like Naruto is just so cool to put inside of a boxing movie. It's something that I didn't know I really needed until he did it himself. And I just can't wait to see what else he does as his career goes on. Creed 4 is going to be coming out. He'll be directing that movie as well. And just his work with Ryan Coogler and just different directors and producers really made this movie feel so understanding of what he needed to be and what he wanted to be as a director. Definitely one of the best directorial debuts, I'd say, maybe of all time, and definitely one of the best of last year for sure. All right, those are my 5 honorable mentions. Now let's dive into the top 10 list of the year. Okay, so kicking off my top 10 list, I have The Killer from David Fincher, a movie that I think is a whole ton of fun. I love Fincher, his directing style, his ability to add tension to a scene. This movie is no different. Michael Fassbender really knocked it out of the park. The soundtrack slaps with the Smiths in almost every scene. Also, one of the best fight scenes of the entire year is in this movie as well, and it's just extremely entertaining. It's the closest thing we'll get to a James Bond movie from David Fincher, and it's everything that you think it would be. I feel like I see a lot of people just really hating on this movie for a lot of different reasons. I'm not sure why. I think this movie is just so much fun. It's like one of the most fun films that I've seen out of the entire year, and I could rewatch it over and over again. Michael Fassbender being at the center of this movie, giving an incredible subtle acting performance. I love seeing him in good movies. I feel like he's never had his chance to shine with a good director. No offense to any of the other X-Men movies that he's done, but they don't really compare to something like this. This is a movie that he should really be a part of. So The Killer snuck into our number 10 spot, but number 9, a movie that honestly, looking at this list, could really go higher, and it could probably go like to number 1. Godzilla Minus One was definitely a movie that really surprised me. I love this film so much. It's so much more than a Godzilla movie. It's really thematically rich. It's really reflective on not only the government, but also just the effects of the atomic bomb. In a year where we got a 3-hour movie about Oppenheimer, this movie is so cool to just be a follow-up to that film. And it's so good just from the characters to the themes to the story and also to Godzilla. Godzilla in this film being one of the best antagonists of the entire year. True fear and horror just reeked throughout my body when he was on screen. I mean, the practical effects, the CGI, all for a budget of about $15 million is really nothing short of impressive. And I know we're getting a new Godzilla film upcoming in a couple months here, but I think that this should be the status quo for what a Godzilla film can be. Now, that being said, I know that all of these American versions can be really fun, but really the essence of what Godzilla should be is captured so well in Godzilla Minus One. I just really want to see more movies like this. I hope that Hollywood just takes notes on what audiences want to see and what works as a film, because Godzilla Minus One did all of that and so much more. Alright, so Godzilla Minus One sneaks into our number 9 spot, but for number 8, I couldn't go anywhere else but my boy John Wick Chapter 4. I saw this film back in March, and it's still been in my top 10 ever since. I haven't rewatched it really the benchmark for me this year when I was reviewing new films and adding it to my 2023 ranking. I asked myself, is this movie really better than John Wick Chapter 4? And clearly for a lot of films, it was not in the slightest. John Wick Chapter 4 really is one of the greatest action films ever made, the best in the franchise. Donnie Yen goes absolutely crazy. Keanu Reeves goes absolutely crazy. Without spoiling too much, the sequence of just the incendiary shotgun, and we get like a top-down view of that entire sequence throughout that entire building, is nothing short of just incredible. And the director of this movie, being a stuntman himself, is just so cool because he just brings so much and shows us just how much can be done with practical effects and good stunt work. We don't need a lot of CGI, we just need more movies like this. That's why a lot of action movies have really taken a chokehold to the John Wick style, but nothing can do it like John Wick Chapter 4. And the way this film ends is very good, but I just hope they don't go further into this franchise. I think that a John Wick Chapter 5 could be a misstep for this franchise. I mean, I know that these are just kind of, like Scorsese said, a little bit of theme park fun movies, but I still am a little bit concerned of this affecting the narrative if they push too hard into the John Wick mythos. But regardless of that, John Wick Chapter 4, still incredible, still the best action film ever made, and it'll stay that way for a really long time. Alright, John Wick Chapter 4 rests in our number 8 spot, but for number 7, I couldn't go too far but for The Boy and the Heron from Miyazaki. This movie really is everything that you expect from a Ghibli film and from a film from Miyazaki, but I think throughout this entire year, I feel like a lot of directors who released films this year, Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, and Miyazaki, really released films that were very reflective. I feel like all these movies had just a very reflective vibe to them in terms of just their personal life experiences that they just applied to movies. The Boy and the Heron is nothing short of incredible, as I expected, beautifully animated, beautifully scored, and I just don't think that it could have been executed any better way. I really got lost in the world the film introduced, and I just been wanting to go back ever since I watched the movie. There's rumors of this being his last film. Apparently it's not. It may or may not be. I don't know. But if it is, it definitely adds to the experience of this movie and the themes it introduces. I only saw the original Japanese version of this movie, but I want to see the dub version. I want to hear Robert Pattinson's voice. But until I watch that version, Miyazaki still shows that he's just one of the best directors working today. Even outside of animation, he's definitely still resting in at least the top 10 for a lot of people for very valid reasons. The Boy and the Heron is just another incredible entry to an already masterful filmography, and I can't wait to see what he does next. But if it is his last movie, this is a very fitting conclusion to an incredible career. So that's number 7, but number 6 still belongs to the holdovers from this year, a movie that I really was surprised by how much love it was getting. I didn't think it could be true, went to go see it, and it's everything that I wanted from a film. It's set around the holidays, it's immediately one of the best holiday films, one of the best coming-of-age films ever made. This movie has so many blends of other movies like Dead Poets Society, Good Will Hunting, Home Alone, Christmas Story. Every movie that you've seen before that's a little bit cheesy, a little corny, it works here. It's very familiar, it's very nostalgic, but that doesn't take away from the film whatsoever. I feel like Hollywood kind of evolved to superhero movies, and then we just are kind of devolving into simple movies like this. I mean, like one of the top grossing movies of the entire year is a 3-hour period piece epic about the guy who invented the atomic bomb. I think that shows a lot of where we're going, not only just as movie enjoyers, but just as a society, how we kind of evolved to superhero movies, big multi-million-dollar blockbuster films. And now we're kind of devolving into films like this. Just very simple shot, reverse shot, simple stories, 0 CGI shots, just a simple story with good characters and a good screenplay. And I'll admit this movie is absolutely nothing special whatsoever. You've seen it before, you've seen it 1,000 times, you'll see it 1,000 times again, but that's what makes it work. All 3 of our leads for this movie, in particular Paul Giamatti, deserve all the Oscars this year, and I just can't wait for award season to come around to see this film get nominated for like 5 different awards.
What about you, friend?
Someday, I'm gonna make great machines that fly. And me and my friends are gonna go flying together into the forever and beautiful sky. Lila and Teeps and Flora and me. Rocket.
It really is good to have friends.
Firing into our top 5 spot for the 2023 ranking, there was no movie that really impacted me emotionally like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 did. And it's very weird seeing how, superhero movies is really growing stale and tasteless throughout a lot of entries through Marvel and DC alike. It's really been bland in a very dark times for this subgenre. That makes it even more impressive that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was able to do something so fresh, so new, so impactful, so resounding, that it really just changed the way I see this subgenre for the better. I mean, Guardians 3 doesn't do anything exactly different or new or fresh. It's the same film that we've seen throughout this entire trilogy, but what it does is what makes it special, focusing on these characters instead of the overarching narrative. It feels like an MCU Elseworlds project, which I'm here for all day. I mean, we've known ever since 2014, when the first Guardians film released, that they were going to be exploring Rocket's character in his own movie eventually. We didn't think that it would be this emotionally impactful or that we would care about these characters this much, but yet here we are. It's especially cool seeing just the journey of Guardians 3 being made, because at one point there was no director whatsoever. James Gunn was fired from this project and we just were left here twiddling our thumbs, wondering if this film would ever see the light of day. I'm happy that he came back to direct this film because there's really no one else who can really tell this story like James Gunn can. Just the cinematography, the soundtrack, the dialogue, everything about all of these characters is just him. It's all him. If it wasn't for James Gunn, I don't really see this trilogy and these characters being as good as they were. It's also a pretty big sign to Marvel right now that they have to just kind of throw away any big team-up Avengers film, overarching narrative that they have, and just focus on character-driven stories. That's what we came here for. That's why I fell in love with these movies and why a lot of people fall in love with these movies as well. And this movie feels like it belongs in the prime of superhero films, and it's just taking everything that you would want out of a conclusion for these characters and just putting it on full display. There's not really enough I can say about this film, but it's definitely residing in my all-time favorites. And kicking off into our number 4 spot, they say that directors get worse as they age, but clearly Martin Scorsese is only getting better and showing no signs of slowing down as he makes more films, because Killers of the Flower Moon is truly one of the just most well-crafted movies of the entire year. Just from the incredible performances from Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone, a, for all intents and purposes, pretty unknown actress coming onto the scene and really acting on par, if not better, than two of the greatest actors to ever walk the earth. And in addition to that, the incredible screenplay from Eric Roth and Martin Scorsese, the incredible cinematography, the incredible score. Really, for a 3.5-hour movie, it doesn't fly by. You can feel the runtime, but it's just incredibly well paced. I never really felt bored in any way. I was so intrigued and found myself almost obsessed with where the story was going. And this movie really does follow the trend of really directors becoming more reflective as they age older. This film is no different. I love that the story of the Osage and immigrants in America is really handled with such care and such tenderness from Martin Scorsese, an immigrant himself. I mean, truly just one of the most tragic stories in American history, kind of brushed under the rug, and I love that Scorsese is taking this film, and you can see just how much he cares about it. I think that the biggest highlight for this movie is simply the execution, seeing Scorsese being like 80 years old and being able to just do it just so easily because he's done it before. I mean, even the way that sequences are just paced to build more tension, and just the way he's directing these two incredible actors while also trying to handle such a monumental story with its scope. It's really nothing short of incredible, and I wouldn't expect anything less from one of the greatest directors of all time. So that's our number 4 spot for the year. Before I dive into my top 3 for the year, I watched a little bit of TV shows. I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, it's usually just some incredible television. Starting out the year, I watched The Last of Us. As a fan of the game, and as a person who actually played the game for many years, I'm definitely pleased with what they did. This is just one of the best video game adaptations ever made, so incredibly well crafted, making changes when needed that actually positively influence the story. I can't wait for season 2. They're adapting the second game, which is a very dense story. I just can't wait to see what they do because it's going to be incredible. The next show I watched was The Bear. The Bear is just everything that you hear about it and more. It's absolutely incredible. Marvel has been on a little bit of a dry spell this year, but Loki was really an incredible conclusion to a character that I've known for over 10 years. Invincible, only part 1 of the season has been released, but it's everything I wanted and more from the second season. It's somehow worth the wait of almost 2 years for this show. So those are the main 2023 TV shows that I watched. I should probably tap into more television since, 2024 looks a little bit dry for movies, so maybe tapping into more TV this year, who knows. All right, so diving into my top 3 for the year. This movie I kind of gave a little bit of hate in comparison to all the love it was getting when it first came out. I just didn't really know what to rank it at the time and was kind of, I'll admit it, kind of ignorant when I first reviewed it. But after I rewatched it, I just knew this movie was just one of the best really of all time. I'm talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, when I first reviewed it, I only gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. But I rewatched it a little recently, and I just was so surprised by just how good this movie is. Not only its story, the story is incredible. It really feels like Empire Strikes Back, leaving on a cliffhanger. It gets really dark like Empire Strikes Back. But what makes this movie so good and so revolutionary is the animation. I don't think that the animation is only pushing the animated subgenre forward, but also just movies as a whole forward. I'm watching scenes unfold on my TV, and I was just like, I've never seen animation do what this movie is doing. I was thinking to myself, if I went back in time, even just 5 years, and showed someone this movie, they would probably pass out because it's just so incredible. Even just the sequences with Gwen Stacy and her dad, and the background turns into the just mosaic painting. It's just really everything. It's just masterful on all fronts. The score from Daniel Pemberton, the soundtrack from Metro Boomin is just incredible as well. This movie is nothing short of perfect and just everything that I want from an animated movie. It's really also showing why Disney is kind of falling behind by not taking on this trend of this style of animation. We see that studios like DreamWorks is really going strong right now with movies like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This movie shows that animation is not just for kids. It's not just something to throw on so your kids can be quiet. This is just so much more than that. This is a character and stories that can affect people emotionally, and that's exactly what this film does. Now, my critiques for the film still really stand. The plot kind of feels a little bit convoluted a little bit, and it's also a part 1, so it's not really its own movie. It's really relying on a part 2, but all of those things, that's kind of the point of what this film is and what it's trying to do. It's supposed to be convoluted. It's all going to be figured out in the second part, and it's a first part because this movie and this story is too big to tell in one go. I'm not sure when part 2 will be out. It's really delayed indefinitely, maybe 2025, 2026, but whenever it does come out, I'll be first in line for the second part to this movie. But until then, if you somehow haven't seen this movie, I really don't know what you're doing with your life. Please get on it immediately. All right, diving into our top 2. This is a movie that really makes me upset just because no one really saw it. It didn't perform too well financially, but it's, I think, one of the best films of the decade so far. One of the best films from the 21st century. Past Lives from A24, in my opinion, truly was a standout for me for this year. I think when it comes to romance movies, it can be kind of cliche, kind of cheesy, or just kind of misunderstanding of what that emotion can even mean, because I don't think that us as humans even know what that means. Something that's kind of beyond our own conception. And this film, I think, is just so complex philosophically and just so emotionally mature and understanding of that really scary question of what if. I think Celine Song really gifted us a gem with this movie, and it's really, I think, a concept and a plot that I feel like I've seen before, and it feels very familiar, but I think that's what makes it so good, because it's something that can be built on forever on many different layers from many different films and directors, kind of similar to La La Land in that sense as well. It's just a film that's going to make you think with its just philosophy and its message. And I only saw it one time back in June, but I'm just still thinking about this movie almost at least once a week. This is my Roman Empire for sure. I think that what Past Lives shows us is that less is so much more when it comes to movies. Simple shot reverse shots, no CGI shots is what makes movies great. That's what's worked for many years. Even when we look at the French New Wave, there's nothing special about those. As much as I love sci-fi spectacle, nothing will really be able to top what simple movies like Past Lives and The Holdovers are able to do. I mean, it's really just like simple scenes, like characters sitting down and having a conversation that can just mean so much and be so powerful. I don't even want to spoil just like sequences from this film, but there's so many shots that when you look at them on the surface, it's not anything crazy, but they're just so emotionally shattering. And in this incredible story, just supported by incredible characters, performed by incredible actors, I feel like I know them on a real personal level. I really care about how this movie ends and where it's going. As the late critic Robert Ebert says, it's not what a movie is about, but more so how it's about. And this movie is just incredibly executed on what it's doing, a concept that you've probably seen before in a film. It's just going to make you feel something that you didn't think you could feel from a movie ever. I urge you to watch Past Lives before any other movie, and you won't be disappointed in the slightest. And my number one pick for this year, it's really been number one with no contest, Oppenheimer from Christopher Nolan. Yeah, and there's not much else I really need to say. That's all I need to say. What's good about this movie? Everything. Everything about this movie is perfect. The costume design, the set design, the music from Ludwig Göransson, the performances from Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon. I can go on forever about that. It's all just great. It's really his magnum opus in his filmography, a movie that really feels like a Christopher Nolan movie just based off of the concept. I never really knew how much it could work, not only technically, but just as a story. Then as I was watching the film, I realized that this is just one of the biggest stories in human history, period. And so since it's the biggest story in human history and also being directed by one of the biggest directors in human history, this movie is nothing short of excellent. It's just extremely emotional, very philosophical as well, with its just themes and debates of the atomic bomb. There's not much else I can really say about this movie. I mean, I'll talk about it more once Oscar season rolls around, but I saw it last year and I only saw it one time, and it still leaves me just speechless whenever I even think about it, because nothing has really been done like what this movie has done. It's just on a different level than what anything that any director, even Christopher Nolan, has done before. Call me cliche, call me old-fashioned, but Christopher Nolan really did just own this year, and nothing has ever been close to topping Oppenheimer. Yeah, once the Oscar season starts coming up, I know that this movie is going to get nominated for every single award, so I'll just probably rank all of his films or just talk about it in depth on its own. But really, until then, there's not much else I can say. This movie just leaves me jaw-dropped even after I saw it. If I could describe how I feel about Oppenheimer, I'd just say Ozymandias Breaking Bad episode. Ever since I watched Oppenheimer, I just have never been the same in any way, shape, or form. Every single emotion that's expressed in that episode of Breaking Bad is how I feel when I watched this movie and how I felt for the past 6 months since I saw it. All right, that wraps up this episode of the Court of Cinema podcast. Let me know, what was your favorite film of 2023? I think if it wasn't Oppenheimer or 80 for Brady, you're most likely wrong. We'll see you guys next week. We're talking about the most anticipated films for 2024. Follow us on all of our socials linked down below in the show notes. And until next time, I'm your host Logan, and I'll see you in the movies.